Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story I'm very excited to present to you guys as we bring back the incredible mind of KB.Michaels and his phenomenal series, The Black Dragon's Night. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. Why, it really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story. Entitled The Black Dragon's Night 2. Let's get straight into that. Chapter 1. Graves of Alvania. Those who have served during the conflict and died have been granted a peace that comes with the dead. No longer concerned with what happens to the living, eternal rest is what is granted to them with the blessing of the wisteria, and a home to lay their heads in the fields of Asmoria. The priesthood of Wisteria tend their tombs and graves so that, even as time fades, they will be remembered. Many travel far and wide to come visit the dead, some for family, some for pride, and some to ensure that they are truly dead. The temple and the priesthood is guarded by the Blades of Wisteria, a holy order of many made up of those from different walks of life, becoming knights to their goddess and protect the land from the rising tide of monsters that plague the land. Even the princess, Filius Albania, has given up her right to the throne in hopes to save the people. She is blinded by love, not seeing how her brother, King Alvania, Alvania, causes the people suffering as he changes the laws of the kingdom. But dead, their rest is now at risk as the corruption from the generals of dissent, as too have entered even the Zamoria temple lands. However, the dead are not without hope, as there is at least one who rides clad in black, bringing justice and vengeance at the same time. These are the tales of the Dark Knight who once was thought dead, travelling across the land with his companion in arm. Their goal is no glory, honour, or even to save the souls of the damned. It is to bring the swift and violent end to the demons that plague Alvania and place their master in the ground. Chapter 2. The Dead Will Rise. As thunder rumbled overhead, the female knight made her way over towards the gate, while others tried to get their horses placed within the stable, located behind the walls of the temple. The priest and priestesses were racing about, preparing vats of holy water and bundles of fire. Several men ran to the battlements of the temple walls along with 5 other men. A group of knights who weren't guarding the main temple had gathered around her. There were only maybe 7 of them gathered with her, making a grand total of 8 of them. They would have to be enough to distract the enemy long enough to do what had to be done. And her electric blue eyes flashed with the lightning flashing overhead. She had reddish-brown hair that was tied in braids and wrapped around her head in a dual-braid bun to allow her helmet to sit still and rest comfortably on her head. The dark grey plated armour she wore was ornate with round brass-coloured pauldrons that matched the counter. The hints of red from the vambrants and tassets really made her stand out. While she wasn't the biggest person there, her body was lithe and had trained to be able to keep up with the others within her command. One of the knights knelt before her and rose, and offering her a great helm for her that had the same copper on the visor. Next to the knight was a priest who kept his head down as he held out a short war hammer and her heater shield. The hammer was the same shade of dark grey, with the hilt wrapped with a crimson leather. The front part of the head was lined with copper, along with a pike on the back end. On the back end of the hilt was a small iron ball. She could have easily used a blade, but this fit her better, as she was neither like her father nor her brother. The heater shield had a golden dragon swirled around the sun, holding a double-handed long sword. This was the symbol of the royal family. She knew that she should have marked it with the symbol of Wisteria, but she was still the princess. Filius placed the helmet upon her head as the visor was still up, and she looked at her men with her. She spoke loud enough so that everyone could hear her words. I know we face an enemy that wants to rip down those gates and tear us all apart. They aren't like anything that we've dealt with before. Their numbers are swelling, and we are in a moment of desperation. We have no clue if the first envoy has reached the king's ear or even to our fellow brethren. Our attempts to others have failed. Your bravery is noted to those who have volunteered to stand at the gates of hell itself. We do this so that those who are willing to fend through the land in hopes that they can find us the help we need. If they fail, I fear it won't be long before we face death anyways. And so we, the vanguard, shall act as the distraction, taking on as many as we can. And I order you all, do not join their ranks or die. Take as many of them as you can though. Do you understand me? Philia shouted as she grabbed up her hammer and shield. The people within the temple all shouted as they rose their own weapons high in eruptions. And the rain started to patter on the ground as it didn't matter how much noise they made. The enemy's moans could be heard over the walls. She flipped the visor down and gave a nod to the priest near the gate. She slammed the hammer to the shield, moving forward with her men in tow. They had moved up as the bar holding the gate door slid away. Arrows rained down from the ramparts, striking those who were close to the gate. As the gate flew open, several armoured figures made their way towards them. They weren't fast, but they shuffled, drawing their weapons forward as they did so. They let out a horrendous wail as more seemed to come out of nowhere. Red, beady glowing eyes came from the sunken hollows of where their eyes should be. Their decayed flesh slipped from their bodies, and they came in to strike. Phileas was the first to step up, blocking the blade, and then came around smashing the skull. It exploded and shattered, flying all over the place. And before a second could even approach, a great sword swept forward, slicing into the other one that was near her, sending it flying to the side, split with ease. A spear then flew into the chest of another, but it still started to pull itself towards the knight. The princess didn't hesitate as her man tried to get the creature off the pole. She smashed the hammer into the chest as the impact sent it flying back and breaking the spear. And she looked at her knight and shouted, "Get back, now!" A bony, outstretched hand was already reaching for her when the knight charged forward, pushing her to the side, and shouted, "Look out!" A dozen more were coming up upon them. The spear knight swung the broken pole into one, as another of the knights wielding an axe swung down the heft through another body. They were easy to kill, broken through impact rather than piercing the shambling corpses that came at them. This was not the problem as they started to bunch together. One or two were easy enough, but as the more gathered, it became even harder. The one who was wielding a broken heft of the spear swung out and brought it up with his shield to block an incoming blade. The heft smashed one skull, but the other two were gripping the shield. Phileas moved to help him as a dozen more were already approaching their position. The knight yanked hard and was sent stumbling to the ground. "Don't! Get back, your highness!" he shouted as they were already grabbing hold of his feet and pulling him towards them. Orion, the great sword-wielding knight, grabbed her by the shoulder and said, "Don't! You need to leave him, Commander." "I won't! We all have to," she began to say as another knight, Marcus, cut her off. "Commander, listen to him. We have no choice, or we lose the temple," Marcus said, looking at the spearman along with the others in horror. They could hear him screaming as the rusted blades plunged through the openings of the armor. It was used to rip the plates free of the body, while others tore at the soft flesh. Hands raked away at the chain to the soft flesh of his belly. Their skeletal hands plunged deep, ripping away at the flesh and digging and grabbing hold of his internal organs. The shock and horror hit them as the other seven moved back, and they could see, even beyond the crowd moving towards them, that the intestines were pulled into the air. Despite the moans of the dead, they could hear him shouting, "Oh dear goddess, make it stop!" An arrow shot into the crowd, hitting its mark. Phileas smashed another skull into the ground as she moved back, shouting as she did, "Back inside! Everyone move back!" And it was just like that day, but it had been going on so much longer. The whole reason that the young warrior had fought to become a knight was to get over the fear of that day. He never expected that he would have to face such a thing again, but here he was again, Cruz and 4 other knights had no other choice but to hop the wall. 2 of them went by horse, while the others slipped different parts of the temple walls. It wasn't like they had a choice since they had entered the siege. The whole situation shouldn't have happened and caught them off guard. They had travelled with the princess and their commander, Phileas Alvania, to inspect the temple of Asmoria. It was located southwest of the main kingdom, and most of the soldiers who perished during the war were buried there. The tombs and graves spanned for as far as the eye could see. It always had a peaceful and serene feeling to the area. The priests and priestesses maintained the rows and the area. Several outposts were spaced out so each parish could tend to the graves. In the centre of the graveyard was the wall of the temple, said to hold an artifact that belonged to the goddess Wystria. The royal knights served the goddess and her will, and so what the hell went wrong? This land had been blessed and was supposed to be protected from the darkness that was supposedly spreading across the land. The Blades of Wystria had heard the rumours, and many were dispatched in order of the church to deal with the rising tide of monsters. If it hadn't been for the Adventurers Guild, the Blades would have been run ragged to deal with such incidents. And when the storm had come, it was sudden and seemed to crawl with a purpose over the entire area. It hadn't started to rain, but the winds completely exploded, coming from every angle. Everyone felt that it would have ended, but it swallowed the sun, leaving the area dismal and grey and overcast. And this left a bad taste in all of their mouths and set them on edge. Cruz was near Phileas on that day when she had ordered the barrier to be raised. "What's wrong, my lady?" Cruz had asked as his hazel eyes scanned the area. Without thinking of it, his hand was already on the rapier on his side. "Where is the rain? There! Someone go get him! Get a healer, now!" Phileas shouted as she saw something approaching them. That was when the others had seen the horse approaching them, and they immediately rode out to receive them. As he was dragged back and brought down, the priest rambled, saying that they needed to seal the gate immediately before he had passed out. At first, it was thought that someone from another nation had decided to continue the war. But how had they made it this far into the territory of Alvania? The princess had personally come down, but the priest who had arrived refused to pass out from his wounds, which were severe. It wasn't just cuts, but looked as if he had bites and claw marks, not by animals, but by another human. "By the goddess, what happened? Has our enemies come down with a madness and fighting like beasts?" No, my lady. Our people. It was our people." The priest had managed to growl out, but she didn't understand what that even meant. Before anyone could question him further, he had passed out from his wounds. Then the bells had tolled, ringing loud as it echoed through the entire church. Cruz couldn't understand what it could be now. He, like the others, ran to the top of the walls to see what the commotion was about. The enemy was coming, but the words all made too much sense now. From the grounds and graves they began to emerge free from their resting place. It was unlike anything he or the others had ever witnessed before. From decaying corpses to skeletal remains clad in armour, pulling themselves free from their resting places. It wasn't just the humanoid corpses, as nightmarish beasts came out with their own version of hellish knights that seemed to raise their rusted blades and let out a cry of horror that echoed with it. A mixture of pain and horror rose over the grounds as they turned to face the temple. "We can't take them. There isn't enough of us. Order the gates to be sealed. Have the men post on the wall and prepare for a rider." They did as they had been ordered, as Cruz understood why she didn't have enough. The first priority was to protect the priests and priestesses within the temple. The other was the fact that within the vault was Wystria's artifact. They would need reinforcements, not just from the main hall, but from their brother, the king. The enemies were their past heroes raised from the ground. The vile power that was causing this could even be felt from there. The rider had been sent, and before the undead could even respond. They were slow at first, but as more of those dark knights arrived, the more organized they seemed to become. All they could do was to manage to hold them back. No help had arrived, and when they tried to send another rider, it had been disastrous. The rider didn't get 10 feet from the gate before he was ripped apart. The creatures didn't hesitate, yanking him from his saddle and tearing away at his flesh. They tore the soft flesh first, ripping into the belly while he was still alive. His screams could be heard, and they watched the horse be dragged down too. The man screamed, reaching for something, hoping the goddess would just bring a merciful end to it all. Cyrus watched as they tore away the armor and ripped his face apart in front of them. Holy energy that radiated from the artifact seemed to protect them for now, but this was not something that they could rely upon. They were mortal, and there was a limited amount of food in the stores. It was lasting for now, but Phileas was worried that the creatures would soon turn their attention to the rest of Alvania. Since no help had arrived, she assumed the rider had failed. Arrows only seemed to slow them down, not really doing much damage. How do you kill something that was already dead? It made no sense as the tension was growing, and there was a real concern on Phileas's face. It was then that Cruz came up with a plan, but it would mean sacrificing themselves if need be. He had started to notice that the dead army that was around them were patrolling, as if looking for a way in but keeping them from escaping. Using this knowledge, they had only one option: risk a small number of them to try and get some help. Cruz would have loved nothing more than to avoid the whole situation, but he had stepped forward, volunteering his service. 2 other knights stepped forward to take on the task at hand, along with 2 priests, who Phileas was sure they just wanted to get out of the situation they were in. Tensions had after all rose since this so-called siege of the dead had begun. The moans and the endless wails never stopped. The enemy didn't need to sleep, eat, or even rest. Before they had started to set out, Phileas had gripped his arm and stopped him. "I have to ask, Cruz, are you doing this because of what happened during the war? I wouldn't blame you for wanting to run away, but you have been a source of strength to the Blades."
"No, Your Highness. I know why this plague needs to be stopped, right here and now. For all we know, the main army and other towns are already experiencing such a terror. Without getting word out, we won't know what is happening. Besides, the commander would have been the first to volunteer for such a job,"
Cruz said as he packed provisions. "Hell, we know that Vahn would probably be more brave than me. He would have charged right out there to take them without hesitation. I am sitting here safe instead of..." Phileas began to say, looking at the wall, when Cruz cut her off.
"He might have, but I doubt that he would ever equate that to a lack of bravery. Knowing that bastard, he would have told you you'd done the right thing and knew your choice was right. Let's face it, this is just as important as the people. You are also trying to take care of the people as well as the artifact. I promise you, we will get help. You must hold out till then,"
Cruz told her as he strapped that bag over his shoulder before going to bring his armor. He made his way to the west wall, where he waited as the attack began. Not letting a moment of opportunity be wasted, he, like the others, slipped beyond the walls. And with him was a priest named Nicola, as one of the fellow brothers had a priest with him. For some reason, they decided having the 2 together would make it safer. And the 2 of them made haste down the rope and through the rain-soaked graveyard. Lightning flashed overhead as they could see the shambling corpses all making their way towards the temple. They moved swiftly and quietly amongst the tombs, trying to get to the tree line. And just as they were coming over the hill, Cruz stopped. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. He motioned to the priest to get down as he whipped behind a tombstone. He gripped the hilt of the rapier and let it free. It was slow, deliberate, without a sound. Cruz had always been good at that. The priest, however, didn't understand what he meant by the gesture, as he stood there with a confused look upon his face. And Cruz was about to say something when the priest flew off of his feet. And there, in a bolt of lightning, he saw a beautiful woman with long silver hair, holding the priest by the neck. The woman was wearing a long black overcoat, and with that, it had blood-red fabric for the lining. Beneath the coat, she wore a silk blouse, top tucked into her breeches. The vest over it matched her coat, black with a gold trim and with a matching set of knee-high black boots. The rain seemed like it didn't even touch her, as her black nails dug into the man's neck. Her head ever so slightly cocked at an angle, and she stared at him with those animal-like golden eyes, as if she was staring like a cat ready to eat a mouse. Cruz readied his blade, ready to drive in her when she spoke. My, another little mouse has tried to run from his trap, only to find himself in even more desperate situations. Let me ask, before I eat you, little priest, are you alone or did more try to flee? She loosened the grip as the priest gasped for air. I'm alone, you foul demon! He sputtered out as his free hand shot up to her face. May the goddess bless you! The holy power flowed as bright light temporarily glowed bathing her face. She let out a hiss, revealing long canines in a fury as well as pain. She dropped the priest before jerking back, and Cruz was about to rush to plunge the blade into her. But the priest shot him a look as he understood it was meant for him not to approach. The woman muttered something in a language Cruz didn't understand as she yanked the priest back up. You lie! She screeched and then bit deep into his throat. Cruz stifled himself before he could yell or say anything as he pressed himself against the tombstone. Those fangs ripped through flesh as crimson blood spluttered out, drizzling into the night. He could hear the slurping noises when he saw her rip the rest of his throat off. She let out an inhuman growl as she dropped the dead corpse to the floor. Then she turned her attention to the temple as the lightning flashed, causing the golden eyes to glow bright. Cruz felt that she was about to come for him when she walked forwards, vanishing into the shadows. Clenching his fist, he brought it to his head and tucked his knees to his chest as he prayed that she would not find him. He looked into the dark clouds and he uttered the words within his own mind. Oh, goddess, give me strength! Give me strength! And with that, he forced himself to start moving again. He ran as fast and as hard as he could to the forest and beyond. He had to find help, somehow. Chapter 3. Twilight Blade. Let's get straight into that. Vahn stood in the middle of the clearing, wearing only his breeches and boots. The sweat rolled down his body. His long red hair was tied back in a ponytail, with only a few strands hung in front of his face. His eyes were of two different colours, one brown while the other was a shade of red. They both had a green hue to them, and were focused on the invisible enemy in front of him. In his hand was a long, elegant black curved blade that came down to a silver fold piece connecting it to the round guard and hilt, with black leather and a silver lining upon it. Etched into the silver metal was a dragon, a symbol of Kaiser. It flashed with the light of the sun as he swung it out before sliding it back into the sheath. Dropping low, his feet moved apart as one hand held the sheath, while pressing a thumb against the guard of the katana. The other hand hovered over the hilt with his fingers pressed ready to grab a hold of the hilt. Pushing the blade out with a click, using his thumb, he took a step forward, while the other hand dropped grasping hold of the hilt. The blade sang as it came flying out, and even he could feel the pressure of the attack. Holding firm, his other hand gripped the base of the hilt, and he followed through with a series of strikes. The memory held firm in his mind. As he witnessed many times, he saw his father practicing the same series of blows. Swoops that came from below that easily maneuvered to overhead swings and ended with strikes from the side, all to come to an end as he twirled the blade around and slid it back into the sheath. It had been over 2 months since he had started to practice with the blade, forcing his muscles to comply and learn the techniques. This was very different from how he used the massive blade, or even the long sword hidden within. No, there was more precise movements to the attacks, and where he had focused on power. This made him pay more attention to movements with speed. It was a lot lighter, but he had to increase his stamina due to the movements he made, from rolling and drawing the blade to even how he struck. When first trying to master it, he even managed to have it slip from his grip. The rhythm of his movements were different also, as he moved on the balls of his feet to dance, drawing the blade about. This was almost a ritual to him, as he would spend any downtime he had to focus on using all of the weapons. The truth was, he didn't even know how effective the katana would really be in a practical sense. It had yet to be tested in combat or taste blood. This was due to the uncertainty he was with a new weapon, but he was starting to feel as if the practice would pay off. He let out a slow breath as he scanned the line of trees and saw his warhorse seeming restless. And from the other side of the clearing, 5 men slowly walked out with smiles across their lips. A larger man wearing a hodgepodge armor stepped forward with an axe over his shoulders.
"Afternoon there, friend. You seem to have gotten lost in the wrong side of the woods. Maybe me and my friends here." "Ah, shove off,"
Vahn said, cutting him off, and turned to walk towards Sleipnir.
"You'll find nothing but death awaits you and your friends." "What's that? Big bad nobleman got a bit of a tongue there, Bart? Should me and my boys teach him some manners?"
A skinny man holding a hammer spoke up next to the bearded man. Bart smirked and replied,
"Why, Slag, I do believe you have a point there. I think he's looking down on us. What do you say, boys? Should we teach this man a lesson in manners?"
They all started chuckling as Vahn turned around, raising an eyebrow. 3 more men stepped out as the one called Bart gave a nod.
"Were you expecting to give me a tea lesson or something? Oh no, let me guess. You just wanted to offer me a way to the nearest town. Tell you what, boys, walk away now or, well, I can't be held responsible for what happens." "Oh yeah? And what's that? You lose everything and run home in some piss-covered breeches?"
Slag sneered out. Vahn shrugged and shook his head. He gave a hard gaze as he walked back towards them and said,
"Talk is cheap, boys. I'm getting hungry. So, if you don't mind, shut up or put up."
Slag looked nervously to Bart, who shook his head.
"Come on, boys. He's bluffing. I mean, look at the thing on his hip. He ain't even got any armour on him. Beat the crap out of him, but try not to knock out any of his teeth. I'll do that myself afterwards."
And the men moved forward, and Vahn dropped low, like he had, allowing his hand to hover over the hilt of the katana. 2 were already drawing their clubs, raised above their heads and ready to drive it down at him, but the curved blade flew free. The blade slashed through them with ease, slashing both of them. The 2 tumbled to the ground, but Vahn was already moving onto the other. Shifting on the balls of his feet, the curved blade came upwards in a swooping motion. The black blade glided with ease, slashing through the face and came back down across the chest. The blade felt as if there was no resistance. The elegant blade flashed back again, catching another into the side of the neck of the 4th. The man had a shocked look grow across his face as his hand shot to hold the blade. The one called Slag saw Vahn's face, and fear enveloped his entire being. He dropped the makeshift metal axe he had been holding as fear crawled into his entire being. Vahn was smiling, not a mar of fear, but something of akin to a demon. The other 2 were already moving in thinking that he was caught, but that look, well, I said different.
"Get up! We have him!"
Bart started to shout, but was cut off as the blood exploded from the 4th holding a blade, as his hand was removed. Vahn kicked the man as he spluttered out blood. His body slammed into one of the other men. In a bolt of an instant, he was already charging at the other one. The man swung high, but Vahn dropped beneath it, driving the blade up into the stomach. Placing his palm on the back of the hilt, it slid up, piercing through the stomach, and then out the back. He twisted the blade and pulled it out of the side of the man. The blade moved with ease as Vahn was already moving once again. The other bandit, who had the bleeding body on him, was screaming as if he was trying to scramble away as he pushed the body off of himself.
What the hell? He's dead. The fucker just killed all of them.
The bandit on the ground was wiping the blood from his face as the black blade was pointed at his throat. Vahn wasn't even looking at him as he was staring at Bard.
Just remember, I warned you that this would happen. You could have just walked away, but now you get the carrion and the worms.
Vahn growled out as he pushed the slightly curved blade back into the throat, as the man tried to protest, which became a gurgling noise. Slag tried to scramble to his feet and run away, but Bard growled out and swung his axe into the throat and stomach of his own man.
Where the hell do you think you're going? Get over there and make yourself useful,
Bard said as he kicked him towards Vahn, who was already making his way towards him. The poor underling was still alive as he tumbled towards him. Even as much pain he was in, Slag tried to curl himself as best as he could, ready to accept that he was about to die. Instead, Vahn overstepped him and was still moving towards Bard. He let out a sigh as Vahn stopped, looking down at him.
I would stay still, or you might just bleed out.
Even in pain, Slag gulped and nodded, understanding what he had been told. Bard spit to the side and gripped a hold of the axe, giving a smug look. Vahn was smaller than him. He knew all he had to do was stop the blade, and he would have him. Flicking the blood from the katana, Vahn slid the black blade into the sheath. He pulled it from his side and twisted his body sideways, with a hand over the hilt. Bard had watched him now twice pull the same move, once while practicing, and the second time was against his men. Hell, he had managed to kill 6 of them without hesitation. Vahn should have been exhausted. No one training like that could have easily recovered so quickly. Several thoughts ran through his mind. One of those was that he could run, but there was a chance he would be caught in the back. Then he thought if he simply avoided the first blow, he could try to strike, but the follow-through might actually hurt him, or worse, kill him. No, Bard thought. If he could stop the momentum of the blade, he could strike him down. A smile grew over that dirty bearded face as he charged forward, holding the axe at the head and base of the heft. Vahn's hand flew, gripping hold of the hilt, and the elegant blade flew from its home. Bard instantly brought the axe in front of him, allowing it to catch the blade, trying to deflect it away from him. And that was when there was an explosion of pain to the side of his head, and everything went white for a moment. Everything went sideways for Bard as he felt his feet leaving the ground. The blade had been stopped, but Vahn had followed through with a sheath to the side of the head. Bard's world faded as he couldn't believe he had done such a thing. And Vahn stood up and slid the black blade into the sheath. He let out a sigh as a voice said, "Wow, you left 2 of them alive. I am surprised." Whipping around, Vahn's hand pulled a katana free, and he pointed the elegant curved blade towards a man sitting over Slag. "Look, buddy, I sealed the wound for now. Doesn't look like you suffered any damage to the organs. However, you need a bath, buddy. I recommend a bath and a change in career. As for you, doesn't your goddess or whatever preach, 'Thou shalt not kill'? The one I serve doesn't seem to care who I kill, as long as I'm going after those demons." "Your order should have dismissed rather than sealed," Vahn replied, lowering the katana. The young-looking man with short, messy black hair stood as his spectacles flashed in the moonlight, hiding his light brown eyes. He was dressed all in black, but it was different from the way most Albanians dressed. A cross-collar shirt that went over a pair of matching loose black pants, and they were tucked into a pair of black buskins that came up to a mid of his calves. Upon his wrists were black cloth braces that came to a point over the top of his hands, and with silver threads lined along the edges. He also wore a matching black long flowing robe and with long loose sleeves that had red and silver lines around the trims. This was held together by a double black belt, forming a cross shape along the sides and back with a long black cases strapped on each side. The only colour on him was the wooden beads wrapped around his wrist that had strange characters etched onto them. Reaching into his robe, he pulled another case that held what was known as cigarettes, a thing for smoking for recreational use in a country to the east. Vahn had heard of it and also knew it was also referred to as a smoke, but found that it just smelled bad. He never understood how one could enjoy something that smelled so badly. But each to their own, he supposed. The man had also a flint and steel device known as a lighter, and lit the cigarette. That could be a better tool to light a fire, and thought of getting one. This man he had gotten to know well over the last couple of years. After all, he would have been dead if not for him.
It's been a while, Teo. I'm surprised to see you around here,
Vahn said as the cherry of the cigarette turned bright red as Teo took a drag from his smoke. Teo smirked, blowing smoke from between his lips, and flicked the cigarette. Well, not so much since we were looking for you. Vahn saw it then. A group of men in full armor came riding into the clearing as one shouted after Teo.
Wizard, where the hell did you go? Why in the bloody hell did you? By the goddess!
Vahn recognized their voice and had a look of contempt come over his face.
Why the hell did you lead the Order of the Blades to me? Are you trying to get me killed, Teo?
He's shaking his head. The knight brought his hand up and slid off his own horse.
Master Teo, you know this man? How in the hell are you alive? We all thought you were dead, Commander. That's what the king said.
You know this man? One of the other knights asked, flipping up his helmet flap and revealing his dark-skinned face. Cruz pushed his own helmet flap up and said,
You don't understand, Sir Conrad. This is my old commander, Lord Vahn Siran. He led us against the impossible odds. Everyone thought he had died during the Veldon massacre, and everyone who was there was positive that he was the one who ended it. But how are you only now appearing? What the hell happened to you?
Vahn grunted, and then said while rubbing his chin,
At least you didn't punch me like Oaken did. Oaken? He already knows? I heard that bastard was the new Lord of Wolfgar. Can you believe that crazy giant is in charge of his own town? Took care of the beast terrorizing the woods and her people. Goddess, it really is you,
Cruz said excitedly. And Vahn looked uncomfortable and turned back towards Sleipnir, while he replied,
Yeah, I am alive, for the most part, and I know about Oaken. It cost him his arm, though.
Sir Conrad spoke up, cutting them all off. And what exactly does this man have to do with our current situation? He apparently has no interest in joining us, and he is just one man. Yeah, he is only but one man, but without this man, you aren't going to get far. This Black Knight is necessary, and I won't go unless he is with me. Teo took a drag and then dropped the cigarette butt to the floor, near Slag. Oh, and this idiot is coming with us also. He can carry bags or something. I'm sure you got a horse around, don't you? Slag nodded as he was confused on what was going on. Vahn was confused as he shook his head, saying,
I am not a hired mercenary, Teo, and I have my own mission to accomplish.
Look, wizard, I get you don't trust us, but... Conrad started to say, but was cut off by another knight making his way over to the corpse on the ground. My God, Sir Conrad, you got to see this. There are dead bodies all around. I'm counting at least 6. Is this your dual ground or something? Do you bring these idiots from a bar and kill them? Conrad asked.
No, they came with 2 idiots thinking they could rob me, and so I killed them. Simple as that. They had a chance to walk away, but they failed at that, and they got what they deserved. I was going to kill that idiot, but I figure he lost his men, and if he didn't get eaten by wolves, he could find his way out on his own,
Vahn said, strapping the katana to Sleipnir's saddle, and then pulled his shirt out.
Anyways, Conrad, wasn't it? I don't know what this has to do with me, but I think I should go. It's obvious I'm not welcomed here.
Several more knights of the blade emerged from the forest line, all with spears drawn. Vahn recognized that wasn't just a patrol, and he asked,
What the hell did you get yourself into now?
Oh, now you're interested in it. Look, Commander, he killed those men with ease and all at once. Trust me when I say this. He is the best bet to get to your princess. Teo pulled his spectacles off and looked towards Vahn, saying, After all, she is surrounded by the dead. Growling, Vahn turned, looking at Teo, asking, What the hell did you say? Princess Phileas is in the middle of this? And did you say the dead? Like everyone is dead around her, and you all left her there? No, Cruz said, shaking his head, looked at Vahn. Commander Vahn, when he said she is surrounded by the dead, they came back from the grave. We were there at the temple of Asmoria. While we were there, it happened. A storm, it just came up upon us, and stretched for miles, blotting out the sun. Even now scouts are reporting just that entire area is covered in dark grey clouds, no matter how much wind is blowing. 5 of us tried to make our way here, but only managed to get back to headquarters. He paused, as if the fear was threatening to overtake him again. The dead, they came back, Commander. The people buried all around us started to come out. They ripped apart the second messenger we sent, and they seem to be organized. If the temple falls, I fear that they will start to spread out over all of Alvania. Teo pulled another cigarette out, lit up, looking up at the blue skies. Can you imagine what kind of hell they're talking about there, Vahn? I am positive this is the work of at least one of those demons. They seem focused on the temple. First off, Cruz, it's just Vahn. Second, you would need an army to wipe them out, and I'm sure you already have that. Hell spells, man. I don't know what you need me for. It's not like I have an army marching with me. Vahn said, confused at first, before his eyes slanted, and he turned his attention on Teo, asking, You have a plan, don't you, Teo? Conrad slid off his horse and spoke again. The main army of the Blades is headed to the borders as we speak. We have sent word to His Highness to see if the regular army will join us. The wizard there suggested that this could only end if we eliminate the source of the malignant force. He believes that the source of the problem is probably close to the temple itself, and claims he can deal with it, but it will be easier with a 5-man crew. He also demanded that you had to be a part of this. What do you say, Black Knight? Care to join me on a very perilous task to save your countrymen? Teo then looked at Vahn as he took a drag and placed his glasses back onto his face. Vahn knew he had no choice, but something was nagging at him. What's so special about this temple that the army of the dead would want to attack it? Or is this because of Her Highness? It's probable because the princess is there. If they are being controlled, maybe they are looking to hold her ransom over the king. Cruz said, but there was something in the tone of his voice. They were lying, and Vahn knew it, as Teo looked at him with that look. They were even lying to him about what was important about the temple. This didn't matter at the moment, as he turned and said, Fine, I'll come along and play your game, but don't think you get to boss me around like one of your knights. I guarantee that you'll just end up on the flat of your back. I don't care about your priest or your goddess. I am doing this to save her. And clapping his hands together, Teo then said, Excellent. If you will be so kind, Commander, I'm sure you'd much rather be on the front lines with the other troops. We'll take this bandit and this knight that knows the way. I am going with you four. The others will report to the line, Conrad said as he turned to the other men, shouting, Move out and pack the supply horses and leave them with us. You are to report to General Windsor on the front line. Are you sure you don't want to be with them, Commander? Cruz was surprised. And Conrad nodded and said, Don't worry, I am better suited for the task at hand. While the main army is drawing the attention of the dead, we slip in and head straight for the temple. Resupply them and then take out the threat from the other side, cutting the head of the serpent, so to speak. Conrad right.
I am pretty sure he had something to do with this plan. But what he says is true. The source of the problem is a demon. Just so you know. And I hope you're prepared for that,
Vahn said as he faced them all.
You mean one of the fabled 13 generals of dissent? Not to worry, the Blades understood that these foul beings might be around. We have the holy protection from my goddess, and blessed weapons to deal with the source. The Knights might deny the existence of them, but we have taken the rumors to be true,
Conrad said as he tapped the long sword strapped to his side.
Well, that's good, because they are real. And now there are 12 generals of dissent.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Certainly another one. Wow. 3 chapters in and 1 broken voice later. I hope you guys enjoyed that one as much as I. And of course, huge thank you to the incredible author, KB.Michaels, for penning this superb update and return series, exclusive to the DMT Forest Affair channel. KB, absolutely smashing it from the get-go. More riveting than J.R. Tolkien, if you ask me. I will do my best to get the next chapters out as soon as possible. And of course, thank you so much for your patience over the last couple of months. As ever, I hope you're well and happy, your family and friends alike, and life is treating you well. Well, guys and girls as ever, you know the drill. Please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. Why, it really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. Now if you think you can pen something of this extreme caliber of penmanship, then please do get in touch with me at the contact email, which is as on screen. contactthedeadone@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. I hope you all had a fantastic week at work or school, or perhaps you received your exam results. Whatever it is that you do, I hope you're enjoying it and are giving it your all. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry. Done! Slag tried to scramble to his feet and run away, but Bard growled out and swung his axe into the... Fuck you. Yeah. I'm just finishing this chapter. Crew stiff. Stir. The priesthood of Wisteria tend their tombs and graves, so that even as time... The priesthood of Wisteria, no longer concerned with what happens to the living. Eternal rest is what is granted to them with the blessing of Wisteria. No longer concerned with what no longer concerned with what happened to the living. No, you fucking dickhead. Becoming knights to their goddess and protect the land from the rise of